The father of the man accused of executing pregnant teenager Savanah Soto on the stand, asking a judge to reduce his bail.
I'm a good guy. You might have a lot of paperwork there, but that doesn't describe a person. That describes a boy.
We have three major developments in the Savanah Soto murder case out of Texas. I'm Angenette Levy. It's Friday, and this is Crime Fix. Savanah Soto was scheduled to be induced to give birth to her first child the day after she was executed. Soto and her boyfriend, Matthew Guerra, were shot to death days before Christmas. Their bodies were found in Guerra's car on December 26th in San Antonio. Court documents say Soto and her boyfriend, Matthew Guerra, had gone to Christopher Preciado's home so Guerra could sell Preciado some marijuana. Those documents say Guerra was known to sell drugs and had been shot at before. Christopher Preciado and his dad, Ramon Preiato, were arrested in early January. Court documents say Christopher Preciado told police that Matthew pointed a gun at him and he was able to grab it and manipulate it, which resulted in Savanah being shot. But detectives say that version of events did not line up with the evidence. Surveillance video showed Ramon Preiato getting out of his truck when police said Christopher pulled up in a parking lot, driving Matthew Guerra's car with Matthew and Savanah's bodies inside. Ramon Preiato is accused of helping his son move the bodies. Josh Ritter is a former prosecutor, and he's here to discuss all of this with me. Josh, let's start with Ramon Preiato, the father of the suspect in this case, the murder suspect, Christopher Preciado. He's in court on Monday asking a judge to reduce his bail. So first of all, how significant is that? I mean, I see these bail reduction requests all the time, but this guy is saying, I'm in jail. I'm not getting the proper medical care. Yes, I have a prior criminal record, but that was from when I was much, much younger. Now he's charged with helping his son move bodies in a double homicide. Your take on his argument that his bail should be reduced because he's not getting proper medical care?
I don't think the proper medical care is going to go very far with a judge. I think his better argument was probably when he was talking about how he has, very little or if any criminal history, it's significantly older and in his past, and he's a changed man now. But the medical care thing, I've seen that raised many times in court. The defendants say, I've got certain conditions, I need certain medications, I can't be in custody. And the answer is always, they have excellent facilities in custody. Whether that's true or not, others may talk to you about that issue, but the idea that they cannot receive medical care, medication, they have facilities inside of all of these jails that can address almost any issue that comes up. So I don't really think the judge is going to give that a lot of weight.
And the judge ended up, after hearing Ramon Preiato testify on the stand, ended up reducing his bail from $600,000 to $450,000. He's accused, it's on surveillance tape. He gets out of a truck. He meets his son who's driving, according to police, the murder victim's car with the murder victim's bodies, the dead bodies inside. And he's accused of helping his son, tamper with evidence, move the bodies, things of that nature. Were you surprised that Ramon Preiato was put on the witness stand and subjected to questioning by the prosecutor about this? Or is that something that's pretty common? I feel like I'm not sure I've seen that happen very often.
I've never seen it happen. I don't think it's very common at all. I think maybe perhaps in this jurisdiction, it's something that they can allow. Sometimes you can allow someone to testify to a very limited purpose. So he's not essentially waiving his Fifth Amendment rights because he's a defendant. He's got Fifth Amendment rights to not testify, but he's not waiving those rights as to the substantive issues, what he's being charged with, but just on this kind of limited issue as to his bail. I've never seen it. I don't think it's improper, but it's very, very rare. And then apparently it did, convince the judge to some extent that they were able to reduce it from, like you said, 600 to, what was it, 450. So that's right. That's not a small amount of money, but I don't know if that 450 is still something that's unattainable for him as a defendant.
Yeah, it's like, does he have to post the 10%, which would be $45,000? Can he put up his house? There are all these questions that would still have to be answered. Is there a bail bondsman that can help him out? If he is able to post bail, he does have to do GPS monitoring, which would be pretty standard in a case such as this. He'd have to surrender his passport, check in, drug and alcohol monitoring. These are all things that are pretty common. Also, there was something interesting that they questioned him about. Josh, he has a business, and he's got some kind of, I think it's like a home improvement, or, he said he still turns a wrench. He's got some kind of business that he was operating not only by himself, but with his son, Christopher, who's charged with homicide, and also his wife, Myrta, who's facing charges in this case. She does the paperwork, although he said she's not on the payroll. So they're basically trying to show, look, this guy's got some roots in the community. He's not going to take off. He's not a flight risk, because bail really is all about securing your future court appearances. So they're going to have to put all the bad stuff out there. Yeah, when he was younger, he did some bad stuff. But he was on probation. Probation officer called him a model parolee or model probationer or something to that effect. So they're trying to show that, yeah, the guy's gotten in some trouble, but all in all, he's a guy that goes to work every day and for the most part keeps himself out of trouble.
Sure, and you're right. One of the things the court is concerned with is, are we properly incentivizing the defendant to return back to court? And that's why we have bail, attached to money to some extent, because it's the idea that, listen, a large amount of money hanging over this person's head is probably a good reason that might compel them to return to court. But the other thing that the judge is concerned with is public safety. And in a case like this, you're involving two murders. This is certainly a concern for the safety of the community, and the judge wants to make sure that bail is set at a proper amount to ensure that the safety to the community as well. So yeah, he's going to consider arguments like, has he been a model citizen? Does he have responsibilities outside of the courtroom that this would affect? All these other kind of collateral issues, but it really comes down to those two that you have pointed out: the public safety and the ability or ensuring that person will return to court. And that's why I think the bail that was set at the amount that it was set is probably proper.
Now let's move on to his wife, Ramon Preiato's wife, Myrta Ramones, who is the mother of Christopher Preciado. When they were all first arrested, we were told by police that she was likely his stepmother. Now we've learned she is in fact his biological mother, so we want to clear that confusion up. But basically, her bond reduction was denied in part, or it was denied in part. So her bond is now $600,000. She had it reduced on some of the charges. So, yikes, $600,000 bail for mom, who is charged with tampering with evidence, altering, destroying, concealing a human corpse. So she's got a higher bail than her husband now, which I find kind of insane, because he's the one that pulls up in the truck, obviously, and then she's the one, the police say, is the one captured on surveillance camera tossing the towel out of the truck. You can see it on the surveillance footage. That's how everybody was like, wait, there's a third person involved in this. So she is going to have a pre-trial hearing in April. So parts of her bail were reduced, but she's now still got to post a $600,000 bail, maybe 10% of that, if she wants to be released. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was curious to me as to why there was a difference between the bail set, because, according to everything we seem to know at this point, it doesn't seem like either one was more culpable than the other. But perhaps there's evidence we don't know about that the judge was privy to that allowed him to arrive at that decision, where he felt like her involvement may have been greater and therefore a greater concern for making sure that she, again, returns to court and there's a protection to the community. And these issues, you're right, are no small thing. This isn't just them arguing over numbers. The difference between a defendant being able to defend themselves out of custody versus in custody, as a defense attorney, I can tell you, is huge. Being able to communicate freely with your client, have your client freely review documents and evidence is a huge advantage over having to go down to a jail facility, showing them documents through a plexiglass window, having limited access to them. What if you go down to the jail and the jail's in lockdown? You can't even see them that day. It just creates so much more difficulty and so much more pressure on the defendant if they're in custody to somehow arrive at a plea deal, because they just kind of want to get out of that situation. So these aren't just arguments over numbers and bail. They are a significant impact on how this case might be defended by both of them.
Mm-hmm. And Christopher Preciado, nobody's asking to have his bail reduced that I know of. I mean, he is accused of pretty heinous, horrible crimes. I mean, he's accused of executing 2 people, a pregnant woman, my God. So his case will eventually go to the grand jury, and he could face the potential, if they see fit, to possibly face the death penalty if it gets to that point. I don't know if it will. But you do have a pregnant woman involved in this, and that can enhance penalties in many states. So he's being held currently on a $1 million bond. I want to now touch on something that happened during Ramon Preiato's bail reduction hearing on Monday. And Josh, this is just, doesn't really impact the murder case that much, but it was obviously an odd thing that happened. Savanah Soto's mother, Gloria Ann Cordova, is sitting in court watching this hearing unfold, and there's a brief break, and some deputies go over to her, and they're like, hey, we need to take you into custody. You have a warrant out for your arrest on a separate case for failing to provide information. So it's a Class B misdemeanor, totally unrelated to this homicide case. But Josh, I can't imagine sitting in court and you're watching a proceeding for somebody charged in connection to the murder of your daughter, the murder of her boyfriend, and the murder of your unborn grandchild, and you're taken into custody. I mean, that's kind of a really, really bad day and a bizarre happening.
Yes, it's very bizarre. I will say the idea of taking somebody into custody when they're in court is not entirely unheard of. I've seen it happen many times in my career when I was a prosecutor, and it's because deputies are thinking to themselves, oh, this is a safe place to actually conduct an arrest. Somebody has come into the court. They've likely gone through metal detectors. We know they're not armed. You're not knocking on someone's door in the middle of the night. So they can conduct an arrest in a fairly safe environment. What's bizarre and stood out to me about this was what the underlying charge is, like you said, a Class B misdemeanor. This is kind of a nothing issue. Not to say that this isn't something she needs to somehow handle, but why it was necessary for them to actually take her into custody rather than, which I've seen happen before, they could just simply remind that person, hey, by the way, you've got a warrant you need to go take care of. And the idea of actually putting handcuffs on them is not even seen as necessary when it's such a low level, non-violent issue like it apparently was here.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising to me. I mean, obviously they tried to do it discreetly, but how do you really discreetly slap handcuffs on somebody and take them out of a courtroom? I mean, obviously it's not like they ran over and tackled her. They went over and, were like, hey, you've got a warrant. But I mean, I can't, I mean, it's just the circumstance that this woman has gone through a lot. Not only was Savanah murdered, but her unborn grandchild, Savanah, was scheduled to be induced the day after she was murdered. So she was just hours away from giving birth to her child. Now both of them are dead. They've been murdered. And Savanah's brother, Gloria Ann Cordova's other child, her son, he had been murdered too. So this woman has lost a lot in her life. Just a kind of a strange thing to happen during this hearing. That's all I kind of thought.
Yeah, and my thoughts too were, you know what? Use a little bit of grace, use a little bit of discretion. Like you said, for everything that this woman's going through, she herself is a victim in all of this. She may have to testify in this case. It just seemed like wrong time, wrong place. I realize they wanted, law enforcement is there to enforce the law, but at the same time, it seems like it was probably a misplaced timing and an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, very odd. Well, Josh Ritter, thank you as always for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's it for Crime Fix on this Friday, February 16th, 2024. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.